What's your favourite scary movie? These are the haunting words a deranged serial killer utters over the phone to his terrified victims before horrifically murdering them in Wes Craven's 1996 meta-slasher movie classic Scream. Someone has taken their love for scary movies too far, as several teenagers from the town of Woodsboro are getting brutally slaughtered by a serial killer who wears a hood with a ghost face, who of course is known as Ghostface. And all the killings seem to revolve around Sidney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, of which is the lead up to the 1-year anniversary of the murder of her mother. Sidney and her friends must use their love of horror movies as well as understanding slasher movie tropes and cliches in order to survive in this movie that is a humorous satire of the slasher genre, while also being an awesome slasher movie itself. So it's time to relive our love of scary slasher movies as we look into 10 things that you didn't know about Scream, the original and the best. So let's stop wasting time and check it out, thank you. Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Well, now that you mention it, probably Highlander 2. I mean, that movie is so awful. The idea of watching it is pretty scary when you think about it. Hey, I'll tell you what, Mr. Scary Voice Man. Why don't you come over and I'll put it on and I'll show you just how bad that movie is. I think I just killed Ghostface. Number 10, inspired by a real killer and the Halloween movie. Scream is the brainchild of writer-director Kevin Williamson, who, by the way, also created Dawson's Creek. Yep, the guy who created Scream also created Dawson's Creek, so that's a thing. During the 90s, he was hoping to make it in the entertainment business as a screenwriter, and he first got the idea for Scream after watching news coverage about the Gainesville Ripper, who in 1990 killed 5 students in Florida in a burglary spree. Williamson further became alarmed about the prospect of dangerous intruders when he found a window open at his place of residence. So with these events in mind and his love for the movie Halloween, Williamson wrote an 18-page script about a young woman who gets taunted over the phone by a crazed maniac, who then shows up at her home in a mask and kills her. But at that stage, that's where the story stopped, as at that time, he got to work for the script for the movie Teaching Mrs. Tingle. But that production went into development hell, and Williamson desperately needed money, so he returned to his Scream script to finish it. He actually wrote a draft for the first 3 Scream movies, hoping that he could pitch it to buyers as a franchise, which would help him out financially. And in his reworking of the script, he added nods and callbacks from other slasher horror movies, such as A Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. Williamson even got inspiration by listening to the Halloween soundtrack while writing the Scream script. Screen script. Try saying that 3 times. Screen script, screen script, scripts. See, it's not nice. Number 9, Bidding War. Williamson's script went on the market for potential studios to purchase. Williamson was also advised to remove a lot of the more violent, gory moments in order to attract more potential buyers. The script was put on sale on a Friday, and, well, there was no bids. However, come the following Monday and there was a bidding war taking place, with many studios showing interest in the script, including Universal Pictures and Paramount Pictures, and even Oliver Stone was trying to get the script. However, it was Dimension Films who Williamson sold the script for $400,000, as Dimension Films were trying to break out in the horror genre. And Williamson felt that with Dimension Films, the movie would go into production quickly, and that many of the violent scenes that he had to cut out would be put back in. So with Dimension Films backing up the project, Scream was officially put into production. Number 8. Wes Craven was working on another horror movie when offered to direct. Horror movie veteran Wes Craven was approached to direct Scream, and he would have been the perfect choice thanks to his long history of horror movies, including A Nightmare on Elm Street. But he originally turned the job down, as at that time he was too busy working on The Haunting remake. So Dimension Films were looking for other potential directors, including Sam Raimi, George A. Romero, and Robert Rodriguez. But Williamson himself felt that those directors weren't right for the job, as they didn't fully understand Scream, and they saw it more as a straight-up comedy, whereas in many ways, it was a parody, but also a respectful homage to the slasher genre, as well as being a slasher film itself. Two things then happened which sealed the deal for Wes Craven to take on Scream. One, the Haunting project had then collapsed, so he needed work. And two, Drew Barrymore had signed on to star in Scream, and Barrymore, being a well-known established actor, instantly piqued Craven's interest in the Scream project. So Craven contacted Dimension Films and offered his services, and he was hired as Scream's director. And as for The Haunting, well, it was eventually remade, but given the reception of that movie, we can only imagine that Craven probably felt like he dodged a bullet.
And I know that I'm not the first person to say this, but when you think about it, Wes Craven revitalised the slasher genre twice. Once in 1984 with A Nightmare on Elm Street, and then again with Scream in 1996.
Number 7. The King of Pop led to the title changing. So Scream's title wasn't originally Scream, it was in fact going to be called Scary Movie, which makes sense as the movie itself is about scary movies. However, the powers that be at Dimension Films didn't like the title of Scary Movie, as they felt it didn't also cover the comical aspect of the movie. So the title Scream was chosen, as Dimension Films' bosses at Miramax, those guys, got the title Scream from the song Scream by Michael and Janet Jackson, which came out in 1995 and was a relatively new song at the time. It apparently was a shock to the cast and crew, all of whom were used to calling it Scary Movie, and Wes Craven in particular thought that the title Scream was stupid, but he would eventually come round. However, the name change would lead to a lawsuit, as Sony Pictures thought the title Scream was too similar to a movie that they had just released called Screamers, but the case was settled outside of court. The original title though did not go to waste, as a few years later, the Scream spoof movie got the title of Scary Movie.
I remember reading that at one stage they were even considering calling Scream the Woodsboro Murders, but, I don't know if that's 100% true. Wow.
Number 6. Drew Barrymore was originally going to play the lead. When Drew Barrymore came on board to star in Scream, it was something of a game changer, as originally it was intended to mainly cast unknowns. But upon learning about Scream, Barrymore approached the production and insisted that she star in the movie, where she was cast as Scream's main lead of Sidney Prescott, which once again makes sense, as Barrymore was a big-time popular actress of the time, so it would have been logical for her to play the main character. However, at Barrymore's own request, she wanted to star as Casey Becker, who was murdered within the first 5 minutes of Scream. It was decided that the shock of having the movie's biggest star die so early would be a massive shock to the audience, who probably never would have seen it coming. And the entire sequence definitely is a memorable aspect of Scream. And it's also kind of a callback to the granddaddy of slasher movies, Psycho, which also starts with what is to believe to be the movie's main star and character getting a shock murder quite early in the movie.
And it works. I think the first Scream movie and my mind automatically thinks of poor Drew Barrymore getting tormented on the phone while trying to make popcorn. Along with her eventual death, of course.
Number 5. Other casting. According to Digital Spy, several actresses of the time were considered to play the main lead of Sidney Prescott, including Reese Witherspoon, Brittany Murphy, Melissa Joan Hart, and Tori Spelling. However, Neve Campbell got the part as Wes Craven had seen her in the TV show Party of Five. She wasn't too sure about starring in another horror movie though, after recently appearing in fellow teen horror movie The Craft, but she accepted the role after her screen test. David Arquette was approached to play the part of Billy Loomis, Sydney's boyfriend turned psychopath, but after reading the script, he asked if he could audition to play Officer Dewey, and Craven liked his more comical take on the part, so he was cast. Skeet Ulrich was subsequently cast as Billy Loomis, as it was felt that he bared a striking resemblance to Johnny Depp as he appeared in A Nightmare on Elm Street, who was also the boyfriend to the main character in that movie, so it was felt that that would be a nice callback. Matthew Lillard was cast as fellow teen delinquent turned killer Stu after he was spotted by a casting director for Scream while he was accompanying his then girlfriend to another audition for another movie. Lillard would go on to hate his performance in Scream, stating that he felt like he had big teeth and a tiny head. Rose McGowan was cast as Sydney's best friend Tatum, after it was felt that she had the right level of spunk and cynicism for the part. As for the role of Gail Weathers, the bitchy reporter turned hero, the production really wanted Brooke Shields for the part, but Courtney Cox really wanted to play the character. The producers originally turned her down, feeling that she had too much of a nice image to play someone mean and bitchy, but after continuously lobbying for the part, she was eventually cast. Breckin Meyer very nearly got the part of Randy, the nerdy film buff who knows all the secrets of horror movies, but Jamie Kennedy got the part because it was felt that he best embodied the character, which he did. Roger L. Jackson was used to provide the voice for Ghostface, as Craven felt that he had an intelligent but evil-sounding voice. Jackson is probably best known for voicing Mojo Jojo and Butch in the Powerpuff Girls. Scream also features Henry Winkler, who went from the Fonz to a strict principal. I guess that's the gag. Along with a cameo performance by Linda Blair, best known for playing Reagan in The Exorcist. And even Wes Craven as a high school janitor called Freddy in a very meta joke.
I think out of all the characters in Scream, the Randy character is the one that I relate to the most. I mean, think about it. He's a nerdy guy who's always talking about movie trivia. That's me all over.
Number 4. The design of Ghostface is a real scream. So what about Ghostface, the serial killer of Scream, whose iconic look of a black hood with an elongated ghost mask has become just as iconic as Freddy, Jason and Michael? Where did this look come from? Well, there are several claims that the Ghostface mask itself is based on the screaming face in the painting The Scream. Yep, the villain from a movie called Scream is based on a painting also called Scream. However, there are other claims as to the creation of this definitive movie boogeyman. Supposedly, the Ghostface mask is from an actual lineup of real scary masks that were out at the time. You see, in the original script, the killer was just described as wearing a ghost mask, and the production tried to design several ghost masks, but it was felt that they just didn't look right, and that they were lacking that certain something. At one stage, Ghostface looked like some weird alien creature. I mean, seriously, what's that? Then one day, while Craven and some of the production team were visiting a house as a potential filming location, producer Mary Ann found the Ghostface mask that is seen in the film, as it was just laying about the house that the team were inspecting, and she thought the mask looked perfect. Other members of the production weren't as sold as she was, but regardless, this led to the production to try and design a new mask based on the look of the mask that was discovered in the house, as they felt that they couldn't just use the mask that they found in the house as they didn't own the rights to do so. Unfortunately, or rather fortunately, the masks they designed to look like the mask that they had found still did not look right, so eventually the production contacted the company Fun World Mask and negotiated with them to use their mask in the film, which is thankfully how we got the iconic Ghostface. Something I've noticed is that ever since the Scream movies, that particular style of mask has become a more widespread popular mask to wear, particularly over Halloween, so Scream probably did wonders for the company. Number 3, it was filmed on a low budget. Scream was working with a budget of about $14 million, which is quite low compared to your usual big mainstream Hollywood horror movie. In order to save costs, the higher-ups wanted to film in Vancouver, Canada, but Wes Craven was determined to film Scream in the United States, as he wanted the movie to look and feel American. In fact, according to Wikipedia, arguments over where Scream should be filmed nearly resulted in Wes Craven to be removed from the project. There was even an idea of filming Scream in North Carolina, till finally it was decided to film in California, particularly Santa Rosa, as well as north of San Francisco and Northern California. The fictional Woodsboro High School was to be filmed at the real-life Santa Rosa High School, but when parents and teachers and local media found out about the nature of Scream, they objected. They felt that the story of teenagers being brutally killed was too similar to a real-life teenage murder that took place 3 years earlier, and so it would just be inappropriate to film there. So instead, the school scenes were filmed at the Simona Community Centre in Santa Rosa. Several houses around Santa Rosa were also used for filming, including Sydney's house, Tatum's house, and Stu's house, which is where the entire third act of the movie takes place. The shoot took 8 weeks to film in 1996, and there were a few odd quirks that happened during the filming. For example, in the scene where the Casey character is being tormented, Drew Barrymore actually dialed 911 without knowing that the phone was actually connected, and a police car actually turned up to the set. For the scene where the Tatum character gets crushed while being stuck in a garage doggy door, Rose McGowan had to have her shirt nailed to the doggy door. Because she was so petite, she kept sliding out of the doggy door. And the budget was so low, the movie's score by Marco Beltrami could only be completed by having Wes Craven record whistles from string players and members of the production.
And just a little extra trivia, in Scream we learn that Sydney's address is 34 Elm Street.
Number 2. Wes Craven was nearly fired because it was felt that Ghostface wasn't scary. So as I mentioned, not everyone was on board with the Ghostface look, and some didn't think it looked scary enough. This included... oh dear, those guys again, who upon viewing dailies of the movie were disappointed with what they saw, and just didn't think the footage of what they saw looked scary enough. And they also felt that Scream was being taken down a more slapstick, comical, silly direction. In fact, they were so disappointed with what they saw, they even considered firing Wes Craven. In order to save his job, Craven and Scream's editor put together a rough cut of the first 13 minutes of Scream, in order to demonstrate what the final product would actually look like, and to show that the Ghostface mask can actually be scary. Thankfully, the higher-ups were then okay with Craven and his direction of Scream. However, Scream's original director of photography had to be fired, as once again, according to Wikipedia, when Wes Craven viewed some of the footage, he found it to be unusable on the account that it was out of focus and blurry, so a new director of photography was brought in.
Which is probably just as well, as I don't know how I feel about watching Scream, the version that would make me feel like I'm drunk while watching it.
Number 1. Making the audience scream. Once filming wrapped up, Wes Craven was editing the film together and had to make drastic cuts in order to avoid an NC-17 rating, a rating which tends to be restrictive when it comes to the box office. In fact, he had to make 8 cuts to address 8 different concerns by the MPAA. However, Craven put his foot down when it came to the Casey murder at the start of Scream. The MPAA wanted heavy cuts to be made to that scene, but Craven insisted that he could not use alternative footage of that scene as he only filmed 1 take, which of course was a pork pie lie. Well played, Craven. So the scene was left intact, and Scream got its desired R rating. Scream was released in December 1996 and was a massive success, bringing in $173 million, and it got praise from both fans and critics alike, with it bringing new life to the slasher genre, with Scream becoming an instant classic, up there with movies that inspired its creation like Halloween, Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street. But Scream is way more than just another slasher film. It's an exploration into our fascination with horror movies, and movies in general, and to a degree even pop culture. Yes, it's a horror movie with blood and guts, but it's also a satirical look into how we observe the horror genre, along with their cliches. Scream is totally self-aware of what it's doing, so when the movie itself does slip into those slasher movie cliches, it feels justified and warranted. If anything, Scream is something of a reflection of us, and our desirable thirst for scary movies.
Anyway, that was my thesis on Scream. A fun, scary, but funny slasher movie that has become a staple of the slasher genre, as well as the late 90s in general. Which I think we can agree that most people love. I mean, I haven't met anyone yet who doesn't like it, so with that, I'm Minty, and man, I still really miss Wes Craven. He really knew how to make us scream. See what I did there? Anyway, see ya!